A farmer in the field always has something to do. After an intense season and harvesting the crops, when theoretically everything in the field has been done, everyone dreams of finally resting in a warm home. However, it turns out that for a farmer to actually rest peacefully, there is still one thing to do: properly preparing the farming machines for winter. How to go about it and why is it so important? Cleaning farming machines before winter is a task that requires significant effort. The working elements of farming machines, tines, discs, plowshares, etc., are particularly susceptible to corrosion as they work with aggressive material, wet or dry. Most farmers typically clean the equipment of post-harvest residues after each use, but before winter this should be done more meticulously. Even small amounts of organic matter will retain moisture. It is worth starting with mechanically cleaning the elements from mud, old grease and plant residues. For some parts, it may be necessary to dismantle the housing to reach all the hooks and crannies. Next, everything should be thoroughly washed with water. Of course, this can be done by hand, but a high-pressure washer will be a more effective solution. It will rinse the remnants of organic matter from all joints and sleeves more thoroughly. Remember not to wash wiring, bearings and rubber elements with the washer. It's best to wash with maximum pressure. The distance of the nozzle from the washed surface should be about 20 to 30 centimeters, and never direct the water stream perpendicularly to the surface. You also have to decide whether to use lukewarm water, approximately 20 Celsius degrees, or very hot water, and whether to use chemical agent. After washing, the machine should be thoroughly dried and wiped down. Even small amounts of water and mud left in tanks, recesses and joints accelerate the formation of corrosion cells. Moreover, leftover water will freeze during cold temperatures and expand bushings and rubber elements. The next step is to visually assess the machine's condition after the season. What to look for? Mainly signs of corrosion. The first stage is noticeable on the paint in the form of bubbles or cracks. This signals that the oxidation process has started, but rust has not yet penetrated the metal. This is essentially the last call to protect the paint layer. In this case, it is enough to remove chips, degrease the surface and apply new anti-corrosive and paint coatings. At later stages of corrosion, rust literally eats the metal and repair requires more profound intervention into the sheet metal, which will incur additional costs. Do not forget to also inspect the tires, because rubber deteriorates during wear and does not like winter. You have to keep the wheels greased, as the famous saying goes. Besides painting, metal surfaces should be protected by applying temporary protective agents. This will hinder the moisture from the air from settling on the metal and penetrating deeper. For this purpose, grease or even vegetable oil will work, which you must spread over all the places mentioned in the instructions. Even a thin layer of grease or wax prevents the metal from contacting the air, thereby serving as a protective barrier against corrosion. Grease should not be spared, especially in the case of bearings and all elements that involve friction. The rods of the hydraulic system also require lubrication. Winter is also a good time to check the properties of the fluids in this system, to replace or top them up, or possibly drain the water from the pneumatic lines. Storing agricultural machinery. Of course, ideally, the entire machinery park would have its own garage, because air humidity above 60% significantly accelerates corrosion. Moisture settles on the surface of metals and in crevices as an almost invisible layer of water, and it also gets into the electrical system. If you don't have a building where machines can be kept, a shelter is better than a tarp. While covering the device will separate it from moisture and precipitation, on sunny days, water from the ground will evaporate and be trapped, settling on the equipment. In the case of a shelter, It is also important that the machine is placed higher off the ground, as this will protect it from water and snow. Standing in mud would be particularly destructive for the tires. Speaking of tires, they are best stored in a dry place with a constant temperature, away from sources of heat. This is due to the fact that rubber does not like idleness, winter and sunlight. If you don't have such an option, you can relieve the wheels by placing the machine on supports. In this case, simply lower the pressure to 70–80%. If that is not possible either, increase the pressure by 0.5 bar and protect the tires from the sun and other weather conditions by covering them with something or putting on covers. It is important that agricultural machines equipped with hydraulic cylinders are stored in a closed position when idle, and if that is not possible and they must be in an extended position, they should be protected with an appropriate grease. Right after cleaning, maybe even during drying or wiping, the machine should be inspected more closely. With a piece of paper in hand, you can note all the elements that need replacement or service. It is also worth checking the bearings, as they may be damaged from working on heavy soils. Make sure to check all bolt connections, the condition of the machine's pins, their safety measures and welds. Winter is a good time for service. Why? It often happens that parts are cheaper then and mechanics have less work. Finally, it's worth mentioning additional protection for the machines, namely dogs and cats. They provide effective protection against martens, weasels or other rodents that like to chew on cables and rubber parts. Preparing machines after the season. Why is it worth it? It is true that the maintenance of farming equipment in the autumn-winter period and its servicing take a lot of time and involve costs, and modern machines made with the latest technologies are very well protected against corrosion. However, no device is resistant to harmful working conditions and inactivity during the winter period. Some people say that machines break down twice as fast when they are idle than when they are working. This is especially true for rubber parts. Therefore, it is worth making an extra effort and, as soon as possible after completing field work, properly prepare the machine for winter storage. The measures described above will help avoid corrosion, unpleasant breakdowns during work, and costly repairs, and above all, extend the lifespan of the equipment. After gaining recognition and vast experience in more than 30 international markets, the Rolmako brand proudly returns to Poland. Our priority is to provide domestic farmers with reliable tools that will perform excellently in everyday field work. We believe in the quality of our machines, which not only meet but even exceed expectations in the most demanding conditions. To find out the detailed reasons why it's worth choosing Rolmako as a business partner for years, we invite you to visit our presentation Why Rolmako at the address now visible on the screen. There you will find 11 significant arguments advocating for our brand and confirming why collaborating with us is a guarantee of success. And how is the situation on your farms? Maybe you have some other tips for equipment maintenance after completing work? Share them in the comments, we will gladly read them and try them out in practice. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.